You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Today, our guest is expert punting and kicking coach and the CEO of the Kicker Zone, Marc Nolan. Marc, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Katie, Stan. Hope you are well today.
We are so excited to have you on the show. We have a great show for our listeners. And so let's go ahead and dive in. So to give a little background for all of our listeners, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into coaching.
Sure. And I love telling stories. I'm Irish Catholic. I come from a family of 7 kids, being around sports my entire life and having lived it. I was home from college one summer, and our mayor of our town, our small town of Barrington, New Jersey, just in South Jersey, or exit 3A for those of you who are fellow New Jerseyans. That's what we talk about. We're always off an exit. I said to me, hey, could you come out and help us coach one of the youth baseball teams? I was a pretty good baseball player, and basketball player, soccer, everything we did back then growing up, because our parents made us stay out of the house. If you came in the house, my mother put you to work, cleaning windows, scrubbing floors. So our focus was definitely to stay outside the house. So I took on this job as a coach. The mayor of the town said, hey, listen, can you help us with this 10-year-old team? We need another coach. So I, along with my buddy, Kevin Mahoney, another Irish Catholic guy, who said, hey, listen, I'd be glad to help out. The mayor said, after the game, you guys get hot dogs and there might be a few beers up in the clubhouse. Well, hey, Irish Catholic, 7 kids, free hot dogs, a few beers in the clubhouse. I'm in. We start coaching, and the next thing, we were I think the movie, the original Bandit, the guys who were the horrible players. I think the movie is based on us because we had the worst kids of all the ones. Of course, all the other dads had picked all the other teams. All the other all-stars had picked throughout those teams. We got the Bad News Bears. I quickly understood the dynamics of the difference between my parents and the parents of these kids who were in their late 70s. And one of the things was I found out that they love to talk from the stands. They love to holler at you and scream at you and make all kinds of noise at you. And, and I'm thinking to myself, here I am. I'm on the third base sideline. I had no kids. It's a Friday night. I should be going out dancing, hanging with my friends. And I'm over here getting harassed by these 35, 45-year-old men and women, right? Oh, okay. So I finally walked over the sidelines and said to them, call timeout. I said, you know what? Fourth inning, the Joneses, you're going to be coaching. The 5th inning, the Houks, you're going to be coaching. The 6th inning, the O'Learys, you're going to be coaching. And I started to myself, thinking to myself, wow, this is completely different than how I grew up with my parents. My parents never would have done these things. So throughout that season, I then took that responsibility on. The following year, I learned that the same mayor of the town wanted me to start a soccer organization because I was a pretty good soccer player. And I said, be glad to. So I started that organization, which still to the day, 40 years later, is still in existence. And we started, and again, same thing. The theme was parents, right? Coaching young kids. We had about 300 kids in the program. Next thing you know, the parents took over. A couple of the parents got caught stealing money, believe it or not, from the concession stands, a couple $100 back. I started learning all these different things. The theme was, I love coaching youth athletic sports. I love helping young kids out. I love helping kids who are socially, economically challenged. I love I love Special Olympics. I love just being able to train kids. And then my passion really took me into punting and kicking, because when I was 9, I started my punting routine. I took the reins of being the punt, pass, and kick champion at our local area, and went all the way down to the national level. And you know what? That's what really got my passion going, is just being able to punt and kick and have discussions. Went to high school, went to college, kept on training kids. So over the years, whether I was in active duty or whether I was just running a company as I was as a technology guy, I always loved to train young kids. And I always think that's God's plan. God's got our plan for us, and we can either accept it or we can go, I'm not doing that. So I didn't accept that for a couple of years, but then I really said, this is my aha moment. This is the legacy, to your point, that I want to create. And not for me, it's really for the kids. So those kids can have a positive experience as they go through high school or college or pros. And probably the greatest thing I hear from parents and mostly the kids I train is 3 words. They say, thank you, coach. That's probably the greatest thing I can ever hear from these kids. And here I am. I'm the longest serving active kicking and punting coach in the United States. I've been doing it 48 years, and I've done it all on part-time basis. I've trained thousands of kids and their mothers and fathers. And I've written a couple different books. The one was a journey about our son's own journey. And then my recent one, the college athletic scholarships. And honestly, Katie and Stan, I was happily retired. I was chilling out. And then this thing called the pandemic hit us. We couldn't train anymore. The kids couldn't train. They couldn't go to school. They were locked down. We were locked down as coaches. Nothing was happening. So I call the NCAA, I call it the National Cartel Athletic Association. That's my nickname for them because they've done things that have really hurt these kids in the long term. And I'm talking about high school kids that are trying to get college athletic scholarships. So when I saw what they were doing and I had done all this research, I said, you know what, I'm going to step out of retirement. It's like the mafia. I hate this, not Nick the mafia, but it's like that a little bit where you're like, they pulled me back into this. I said, so I'm going to write another book. Just like I wrote my other 2 books, it was about experiences that I've had and experiences that others I've helped or tried to help have had. And that's why I came up and wrote this book. And I said, I'm going to write this book. I had no idea where this was going to take me. But in my book, in my foreword in my book, I talk about Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat, where she walks up to the Cheshire Cat and says, hey, where do these 2 roads go to? And the Cheshire Cat says, where do you want to go? And Alice says, I don't care. And the Cheshire Cat says, basically, it doesn't matter what road you take. So I have that in the foreword of my book because I think that's what happens with a lot of these kids now and their parents. They don't know what road they want to take. You know, they got little Susie or Johnny, they're spending $15,000, $20,000 to fly all over the place to play in some U9 World Championship tournament, you know, that 10 years from now probably isn't going to matter. But hey, it's all about the money for them, right? It's all about getting that ring or the buckle. Or I ran into a kid who literally has a rodeo buckle, world champion on it. And the buckle, I think, was bigger than his entire stomach. He was like 8. I'm like, it's just so I hope that answers your question.
It does. No, that was a great answer. And for our listeners, a little bit of background. So Marc's new book is called The Journey, a roadmap for every football kicking specialist and their parents. And so let me throw this out. I actually have a background of working with kids. I was in ministry, children's ministry for years and years, loved working with children. And one of the things I say I just cannot agree with you more on is the importance of not only teaching the kids, but incorporating the parents. You can work with kids all day long, and it will not be nearly as successful as if you can incorporate the parents. And so I love that parent involvement is such a huge thing in every aspect, it seems, of what you do, whether you're writing a book or whether you are having them come coach along with you on the sidelines, which makes that story made me laugh because as a person who has dealt with some difficult parents in the past, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and heckle, right? But when you're out there in the game and you're the one coaching the kids, it's a little bit different. So I love your view of parent involvement and, you know, it builds a stronger family. It builds stronger, more resilient children, and it builds a better program, whether it's soccer or football or some other ministry or program out there. Parent involvement is truly, I would say, one of the foundational blocks for children's success. So I love that that's a huge part of everything that you do with your journey. You also have, okay, so let's back up. So to talk about your book, so The Journey, a roadmap for every football kicking specialist and their parents, what can our listeners expect from that? Is that your Alice in Wonderland, you can take this road or this road and here's your roadmap for it?
No, I had to just correct you if you don't mind.
Okay.
My most recent book is this one,
Okay.
which is the college athletic scholarships. book. So my journey was the second book.
Okay.
My first book was a technology book. This one is really my 48 years of coaching baseball, soccer, basketball, football, track and field. And I have pictures of me, believe it or not, from 1978 in this book of me with my fro on, right? Irish Catholic fro with my hair over my baseball cap, which is funny, right? And you probably got that maybe off my website because there's 2 different books on there. So you may have just gotten a little bit. So that may be just something that I have to change on my behalf to help myself out. But this book really encapsulates all the sports, all the kids are doing. And the reason why I say that, Katie, one thing I know about parents, and I know a lot of them, and I know a lot about parents, is that they're very dynamic in what they do. From the standpoint, and you can appreciate this, I can remember when some of my friends had kids and the baby is no more than 3 or 4 minutes old. And then all of a sudden you hear, oh my God, look at the size of the hands and feet on that guy. He's going to be a tight end. My gosh, we better call Notre Dame. They're going to offer him right now. So I talk about that in my book a lot, is that you guys need to chill out. I just had a camp, a small-sided camp last Saturday I ran, and I told all the parents that were there, look, take videos, come on out, enjoy. I have 15 kids I train, just a small-sided camp. We do a lot of sharing together and talking about stuff. And I said, look, Nick Saban is not going to be here. Chip Kelly is not going to be here. There's no NFL scouts going to be here at this camp. So just go get your 6-pump venti mocha stirred latte over at Starbucks and relax. Have a good time. But I've seen literally, Katie, the thousands of parents I work with, they can't seem to relax. We used to call them helicopter parents or whatever you want to call them. I now call them drone parents. You need to be like drone parents. You need to go in and get out. Leave them alone. Get over the kid, leave them alone and let them enjoy themselves. When you see parents walking around airports with their son or daughter's uniform on in their outfit, you're like, all right, it's a little different, right? I wrote the book because I try to be as comical as I can in the book with the stories, because I think we as parents have to laugh at ourselves. We have to laugh at the things we do and say. And for instance, Katie, I used to videotape all the parents on the soccer games. Now, when I was a director of coaching at a club here in Atlanta, and what I would do is I would say to the parents, hey, by the way, we're just going to show this Monday night. We're going to show the scorpions against the gazelles or the sharks against the fishes. And then what I would do, I would literally take the video of the parents hollering on the sidelines. Oh my God, he wasn't offside. What's wrong with you? You know, of course. And I would post, that would be the opening segment. So the parents thinking they're going to see little Timmy and Janie running around scoring 600 goals. And there they are hollering into showing them hollering. Wow, is that me? Like, yeah, that's you. So I try to tell parents that you have to take yourself not as serious as it is. And listen, I'm a recovering sports parent university graduate. That's what I call myself. So I've been there. My wife and I both have been there, not to the extent some of them have, but it certainly is something that you want to help parents out. And that was why I wrote the book for the parents. I have a whole chapter just on how parents should be recruiting, their role in recruiting, and then the athlete themselves as a student athlete, how they have to do their own things in the book as well.
I love that. And you also have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, the type of guests you have, the type of things you cover with that.
Sure. So my podcast is called Don't Outkick Your Coverage. And the funny thing is it has the Three Stooges on there as the kicking of football. And my podcasts go from me doing my sports parent university or interviewing people. Interviewed the CEO of a great company called Scout Smart, which is a recruiting based organization. She's the CEO of the company, great lady. I interviewed a guy the other day on our podcast who has nothing to do with sports. Matter of fact, his name is Bernard Owens, and he'll say, Mark, I'm probably the least athletic person you are ever going to meet. But we shared his story and his journey about his attempted suicides he had, and the things that he went through as a young man at age 11, and then another young man at age 21. And then I have 2 upcoming episodes where I'm interviewing some college coaches, and I'm interviewing other kicking and punting coaches that I've been talking to throughout the years, just to give them some level set of the kids with this whole transfer portal, which is going on right now in college athletics. And then the just the whole dynamics of what goes on. I have other people I'm interviewing. A friend of mine who is named Al Vaughn. He's the only 7-time Mr. Universe champion, cancer survivor, Vietnam War veteran. So I try to pick, like you and Stan do, I try to find people, A, who are passionate, and B, that want to share their stories and their legacies, whatever it is, to help. If you can help that one listener out that's struggling with something, or give them something that new that they didn't have before. I've always been a data guy. I love doing research and I love data. So if I can put those two together, and if I give it to the parents, if they choose not to listen to it, I can't do anything about that, right, Katie? It was like, as the horse to water lead the horse to water kind of thing. But so that's really why I've written the book and why I'm still passionate. I'm hopefully going to be speaking in front of Congress again in the next couple of months. There are some bills that are coming up around this whole names, images, and likeness, which I call now it's legal, where they're giving money to college kids for whatever else they want to give them to. And it's all being driven by what I call the mafia, the directives, they're called, the collectives. Did that answer your question?
It did. Yes. No, it really did. And I have another couple of questions for you. But before I jump into those, Stan, what questions or thoughts do you have for Mark?
Yes, Mark, we have a lot of listeners on our podcast who are parents, but their children aren't athletic. I would say that my parents were parents of children who weren't athletic.
Mhm.
When you were talking about the guy that you interviewed the other day who said he was the least athletic person you've ever interviewed, I'm probably going to surpass that, because now you're probably being interviewed by the guy who's the least athletic person. My question, I know that all of your work, your passion is really about sports and coaching. So I want to challenge you to think for a second about the books you've written, the most recent book you've written, but the previous one to that. What are the takeaways from your work that can be useful to parents of kids who are not athletic? Maybe they have other talents. Maybe they're artistic, they have music, maybe they're academics. What are the takeaways for them?
Sure. And that's a great question, Stan. And I bring the athletics into it, but I also, to your point, so our son was a chemistry major. Okay. So when he went to college, when he graduated college, he was the only person who went to this school, a D1 school called Stony Brook University up in New York, when he graduated with a degree in chemistry. When we were at the commencement exercise, the dean of the chemistry said, you know what, in the entire 60 years of Stony Brook being around, we've never had a football player graduate with a chemistry degree. And that was our son. So here he is, a kicker and a punter, please believe me, I'm not knocking the other kids or the football team, but when they're taking, like, believe it or not, the University of Georgia has a program, a class called Fundamentals of Walking. That is literally a class that you can take. Our son's, I'm not going to go to a school that teaches fundamentals of walking. So he was a chemistry guy, but his focus, as what I try to tell parents, find the focus that your son or daughter loves, whether it's sports, whether it's academics, whether it's doing something different. Find that focus. And when you find that passion in your child, that's where they're going to succeed. I tell you, Stan, I had a young kid that played soccer many years ago, little 9-year-old guy, great kid. But when he was playing soccer, you see him sometimes, he's out there shooting the airplanes up in the sky, all that kind of stuff. Clearly didn't want to play soccer. I take him out of the game. Come on over here to the sidelines. He sits down with me. I sit down right next to him. I said, so, by the way, he said, you're really enjoying this? Yeah, it's okay. I said, well, listen, what really gets you going, like, every weekend? What do you really like to do? He goes, you know what, Coach Nolan, I just want to go camping and fish with my dad. So after the game, I walked over to his dad. Now, the dad had already bought him the $300 pair of orange soccer shoes, right? And everything else going on. And I said, hey, Frank, by the way, your son told me this today. And when I told him that, he says, that just blows me away. I had no idea that my son wanted to do that. He said, so we'll finish out the season. We'll continue playing. I said, hey, listen, do me a favor. If your son wants to go camping with you every Friday and Saturday night, you don't need to play soccer anymore. Go take your son camping and fishing, because that's what your son wants to do. He wants to go hang out with his dad on weekends. So again, to my point about the athleticism side of the house, it's not even that. It's just that passion that those kids have. And believe me, I've seen it. I've seen band parents with their passion. I've seen baseball parents. I've seen parents that robotics. Those kind of passions are what we want to have in our children. We just have to find that channel of being able to find that passion for kids. And I'll close that question with this, Dan. In my book, I talk about when the kid comes home from, could be band practice, could be from baseball practice, it could be from robotics practice. And the parent says, hey, Johnny, how was practice tonight? And usually the kid says, yeah, fine. And then they head upstairs, or they head downstairs in their basement. Guess what? And in my discussion with Bernard the other day, I said, you know what? Sometimes it really isn't fine. Sometimes those kids had issues going on at school that really is not fine. And you can't just go back to watching Dancing with the Stars as a parent and thinking that Johnny or Janie is okay. There's underlying things that happen from that. So I think whether, again, the athletic side of the house, I encourage every parent to find the passion that their kids have and let the kids drive the passion in the front seat of the car, as opposed to the parents driving the passion and talking to them while they're in the back seat of the car.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that, and I could not agree with that more. We have 5 kids, ages 14 to 4, and
I thought you were like a teenager.
You're so sweet. It must be the good lighting. Maybe I accidentally turned a filter on. No, but I love what you said, and I completely agree with that, because with our kids, what we found, the 14-year-old, when he was little, we put him in soccer, and he was the kid out in the field throwing grass, confetti,
Sure.
and didn't care about the game. And so what we have learned over our years of parenting is exactly what you're talking about. We let our kids try new things all the time. Last year, the girls wanted to do horseback riding, so we tried that. And eventually our kids, they fall into something that they really like. And some of our kids have found their passions, some of them have not found them yet. And so we love to let them try, whether it's soccer or gymnastics or flute or whatever it is. If they want to, we don't make them play a sport or an instrument or anything. We let them try it. If they love it, that's wonderful. If they don't love it, then we always finish out the season or the semester or whatever it is, and then we try something new. Sometimes it takes a while until your kid finds what they love, and maybe it's something they'll do as a career, and maybe it's something that they'll do as a hobby. But either way, sometimes it takes a while. We have a couple of kids that are very athletic, and then we have a couple of kids that are not at all athletic, and that's okay with us. We're letting them find what drives them. So I love your view on that, and I could not agree with you more.
Thank you. You know, and it's funny to wrap that up. One of the things that some of the parents I talk with, there was a study years ago, and I think it was done by the NCAA or maybe the National Federation of High School Sports, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And a lot of these parents will say, oh, you got to play 2 sports in high school because of college coaches. I'm like, no, that's a fallacy. That clearly is not, because you know what? You only get scholarship in one sport in college. They're called counted scholarships. I said, but you know what? There was a study done by the NCAA. I'm pretty sure it was them. And they said, they interviewed 1,000 kids and said, listen, what's the first sport you like? And they would tell their first sport. And that child will migrate to that one sport or that one activity. Okay. And they said, if they start doing the second sport, that becomes work. So you mentioned a very key word. You let them play the game they want to do. And Willie Stargell, who's a famous baseball player, said it best. He said, somebody interviewed him, he says, why do you have such a smile on your face every day? Because when the game starts, the umpire yells out, play ball. He doesn't say work ball. So I try to tell parents, if you can get the mindset out of, if your son or daughter strikes out at a game and you get them in the car and you berate them for striking out once or twice, but you forget the 2 home runs they hit. It's very easy for us as parents. I had it happen the other day where a kid hit 30 field goals. He hit 10, 10, and 10. He was 27 for 30. When I brought the dad in to say, hey, what'd you think of that set? The dad goes, Johnny, you missed those 2 over there. So he immediately went to the negative. not the positive, not the hate. God, it was awesome. You 27 for 30. That was great. And I wanted to ask his opinion first because I wanted to see what kind of person he is, right? How he relates to his son or daughter in the things they do. And now I think that's true in life. Hey, listen, Katie, I grew up playing the accordion. My mother made me play
Was that not something you were passionate about, Mark?
My gosh. I'm like, oh, I can still remember the guy's name. Mr. Hatfield was my accordion teacher. But because we grew up in the Philadelphia area and we had this thing called the Mummers Parade, we had the accordion going back and forth. I'm like, oh my dear Jesus, I don't want to do this. So I started playing the saxophone. But again, my mom was, oh no, you can play it. You can be. I'm like, Mom, listen, I'm not doing that. And then my friends would see me and they're like, dude, what is that thing? I'm like, it's an accordion. What the hell you do with that? I don't know. I'm still trying to learn. So to your point.
And let me guess, as an adult, you've never picked up an accordion, have you?
No, and I don't care to. Matter of fact, it's like me with Catholic school nuns that I had. If I see them at the airport, I shy away from them because I know they're going to smack me. So it's like, oh my gosh. So if I see an accordion, I'm like running as far away as I can. But again, to your point, I think you have to let our children enjoy what they really want to do. And we have a daughter. Our daughter is very similar to my wife. She's my wife's Asian. You may have met my wife, Stan. My wife is Filipino. So I can only say to her, she played softball for her corporate team. And I said to her, you were literally the worst catcher probably in the history of your company. But that's okay because they probably didn't have any Filipino catchers mitts growing up or stuff like that. So we kid about it. And I think you have to have those experiences growing up. And you have to let your kids hear those experiences growing up, what they went through. So,
right.
Mark, before we run out of,
go ahead, Stan.
Before we run out of time, I want to shift gears for a second. I know your most recent book really focuses on your frustrations with the NCAA. You alluded to it a minute ago, but I want to give you a chance to drill into that a little bit.
Sure.
When you and I first met, that was the thing we talked about, and that was the thing that really intrigued me. And I never thought about the NCAA the way you think about it. So talk about that.
Yeah. And thanks for that. Yeah. In the history of the NCAA, which goes back to about 116 years and the pandemics, we've had 5 global pandemics since the NCAA has started. And never in the history of the NCAA have they closed down sporting events. Never in the history of the NCAA have they done anything, taking stadiums out of play and revenue and all these kids. So I believe that they really are. I believe that they're such a one style of a mafia-driven organization because when these kids sign these contracts, it's a contract of adhesion. It's you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. And then when they changed the 6-year eligibility, which basically said, Stan, we're going to take all those college kids who should have graduated college. We're going to give them another year of athletic scholarship money to play. Now, the high school kids who were coming in the next year to take over the next athletic scholarship, they were told, sorry, the NCAA has said, we're going to give Johnny and Mary in the different sports another year of eligibility. So all those high school kids who had contracts they were going to try to sign with the NCAA for the schools they're going to, they said, you're out of luck. And then the NCAA went a little step further. They went and did this thing called the transfer portal. Again, the transfer portal is designed to let kids who are college level kids, all of a sudden, if they don't like the school they want to go to, in the past, if you didn't like your college, you had to sit out a year. The NCAA has come back and said, hey, you know what? If you don't like your college anymore, your coach or anything like that, you can now go into this thing called the transfer portal. And you can go to any school you want to, as long as NCAA school, any school you want to go to, and you can transfer out of that school into another school. And that other school may have a kid that's already been trying to get a scholarship. So my point is, I interviewed about 60 college coaches. I said to the question, if you had your choice between an 18-year-old kid who's playing baseball, softball, basketball, soccer, or a 22, 23-year-old college kid that's got college experience, gets college grades, has college films, that's a few more years older, if you will, mentally wise, which person would you take to be on your team? And you almost unanimously, they said, oh, if I'm a college coach, I'm looking at it from a standpoint of all I care about is my winning attitude. I want to win because that's how I get paid as college coaches. Kirby Smart doesn't get $10 million a year at University of Georgia because he's a nice guy. No, he gets paid $10 million a year because he wins national championships, just like Nick Saban did and all the other guys. So that's why I think the NCAA to me, I think it should be abolished. I would love to see the NCAA go away just because they're a bloated quasi interagency government with a bunch of different, I don't want to call them dons, if you will, from the mafia, but they have everything. They got the Pac-10, they got this one, they got that one. They all have their little groups of pockets of money. And they're about $1 billion a year in revenue, the NCAA. $1 billion a year. The sports industry, Stan and Katie, in the United States is an $18 billion a year industry. You can't go anywhere in the United States any weekend where there's not some tournament going on somewhere in some state where parents are flying in and out of for little Johnny to 9, 10, 12 years old. So that's my rant, if you will, of why I believe the NCAA. And now the NCAA has screwed up so much, they are now asking Congress, literally today, there's a meeting in Congress going on. The NCAA is asking Congress to step in and take over these issues. Congress, they're the last people I want to have to take care of a problem. Are you kidding me? So that's why I'm passionate about, and I've seen so many kids, Stan and Katie, that had scholarship offers that now lost those scholarship offers. And now they're a walk-on at another school, or they've even stopped playing sports because of it. So it's really a tough thing right now for these high school kids and their parents. And the parents just don't know. Guidance counselors, high school guidance counselors really are not equipped to what's going on. They don't know the rules and regulations. The high school coaches, some of them get mad, but for the most part, they don't know. So it really is a big mess up from my standpoint.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're saying it's about money and power, not about growing good kids.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all the NCAA. It's always been about money and power for them. It's that contract of adhesion where it's all about them, how they do things, where the revenue comes. The NCAA they give out revenue every year to the different organizations. So they send money out to the Pac-12 or the Pac-10 or the Big Ten, and it's all around the money, revenue driven. And that's why the final thing I'll say to you is that's why this NIL, this names, image, and likeness, it's all about the social media. It's all about everything being driven by social media for the likes and for their names and for their images. And I think it's just going to fall apart. I would hope my legacy would be 20 years from now, Stan, when you bring this interview up, the NCAA is gone. I wish it was 20 minutes from now, but that's not going to happen.
That was one of the questions we had for you that we usually use to close out and wrap up the show is, what do you hope your legacy is? And you just hit that for us. And so I love that. I love that. My final question for you, Mark, is you've been in this business you've been in the game for a long time. If there are parents listening that are parents of athletes and you could give them one bit of wisdom in proceeding with their children as athletes and as future athletes, what would that advice be?
I would tell them to relax. I would tell the parents to be more like Ozzie and Harriet and not, I don't even know how I can equate to a current TV series with crazy parents, but I would ask them to relax because it really should be about their kids. It shouldn't be about them. And I think sadly, a lot of the times it becomes about the parents, and the kids really just want to play. The kids just want to enjoy themselves. They want to form relationships with their buddies or budettes or whatever it is. And I think the longer term effects, listen, I used to love my discussions with our son traveling. He and I had some great conversations going on. Our son was more the athlete. Our daughter was more the free spirit, the cheerleader kind of a person out there. But I would just say, please relax and probably drink decaf.
That's probably good advice for all of us. I love that. So our takeaway words for our listeners today are play and relax. That's good advice for everybody.
Yes.
This has been the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. And our guest today has been Marc Nolan. For more information about Marc, his training programs, his podcast, and his books, you can visit thekickerzone.com. And we'll also link it for you in the show notes. Marc, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Katie and Stan. Have an awesome day.
Hey, super. Thank you, Marc.
Okay. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.